The arena floor was stained with blood from 1,000 different species. Some of it was red like human blood. Some was blue, green, or colors that had no name in any Earth language. The crowd roared above, filling the massive dome with sounds of hunger and excitement. They wanted death. They always wanted death. Dae-hyun stood in the center of the arena, his hands tied behind his back. His cargo ship uniform was torn and dirty from 3 days in the slavers' cells. He was a simple man, 34 years old, with calloused hands from loading freight containers and a quiet face that smiled rarely. Back on Earth, he had worked at his family's small shipping business. Out here in space, he hauled medical supplies to colony worlds that needed them. Nothing special, nothing important enough to save his life now. The arena master's voice boomed across the speakers in a language that his translator Chip barely understood. Something about fresh meat, something about mercy. The crowd laughed. Dae-hyun had heard them laugh like this before during the past 3 days. He had watched them throw 6 other prisoners into this arena. None had walked out. His ship had crashed on Varash Prime 4 days ago. Not a big crash, just engine failure during a supply run. He had sent out a distress signal and waited. But the ones who came were not rescuers. They were slavers who dragged him from his ship and took everything he owned. Almost everything. In his pocket, hidden against his chest, was a photograph. It showed a German shepherd dog sitting in a yard, tongue out, eyes bright. The dog's name had been Max. Dae-hyun had raised him from a puppy 12 years ago, back when Earth still felt like home. Max had died 2 years before Dae-hyun left for the stars. Sometimes late at night in his ship, Dae-hyun still looked at that photograph and remembered what it felt like to have someone happy to see him. The gates across the arena opened. They were massive, made of dark metal that hummed with energy shields. Something moved in the darkness beyond. The crowd's laughter died. Even they, blood-drunk and cruel, felt the fear that came with what lived behind those gates. It came out slowly. First one massive clawed foot, then another, then 4 more because the thing had 6 legs in total. Its body was the size of a cargo transport, covered in scales that looked like black glass. Each scale reflected the arena lights, making the creature seem like it was covered in stars. Its head was enormous, with a mouthful of teeth as long as a man's arm. 2 eyes glowed yellow-white like small suns burning in a face made for killing. The creature's tail dragged behind it, tipped with spikes that scraped the stone floor. Cravath the Unbroken, someone in the crowd whispered. The name spread through the stands like fire. Everyone knew that name. Cravath had fought in this arena for 12 cycles, which was about 15 Earth years. It had killed 1,347 opponents. Warriors from every corner of the galaxy had tried to defeat it. Soldiers with plasma weapons, hunters with energy shields. Even a Krell battle champion once, a creature that stood 3 meters tall and could crush steel with its bare hands. Cravath had torn the Krell apart in 40 seconds. The creature stepped fully into the arena. It lifted its head and roared. The sound was not like any animal Dae-hyun had ever heard. It was deeper than thunder, sharper than screaming metal, and it carried something else inside it. Pain. Old, deep pain that had turned into rage over years and years. Dae-hyun did not run. He could not run anyway, his hands were still tied. But even if they were free, he would not have run. He had learned something from Max back on Earth. Animals, even dangerous ones, could sense fear. They could smell it on your skin, hear it in your heartbeat. Fear made them attack faster. Fear made them cruel. So Dae-hyun stood very still and watched the creature. He watched how it moved. How its ears, small and flat against its head, pressed even flatter when it looked at him. How its lips pulled back from its teeth, showing them but also exposing its gums. How its eyes were wide, pupils so big they nearly swallowed the yellow color. These were not the movements of a confident predator. These were the movements of something afraid. Cravath moved closer. The crowd was silent now, waiting for the killing strike. The creature circled Dae-hyun once, then twice. Its breath came out in hot clouds that smelled like sulfur and old meat. Its claws clicked on the stone with each step. Up close, Dae-hyun could see scars on its scales. Not scars from fighting. These were different. Small, round marks that looked like burns. Marks from weapons designed to cause pain, not death. Marks from torture. On the creature's neck, barely visible under its scales, was a metal collar. It pulsed with a faint red light. A shock collar. Dae-hyun had seen them before on cargo worlds where they used animals to haul freight. He had always hated them. They taught animals to fear, not to obey. They turned gentle creatures into weapons. Slowly, carefully, Daehyun lowered himself into a crouch. He kept his eyes down, not looking directly at the creature. Direct eye contact was a threat. Every animal he had ever met understood that. He shifted his weight to make himself smaller, less threatening. Then he waited. Cravath stopped circling. Its growl changed pitch, becoming confused instead of angry. The creature's massive head lowered, bringing its face close to Daehyun, close enough that he could see his reflection in its yellow eyes, close enough that one bite could end everything. "It's okay," Daehyun whispered. His translator chip did not broadcast the words, so they came out in Korean, the language of his childhood. "You're scared. I understand. It's okay to be scared." The creature's nostrils flared, taking in his scent. Daehyun smelled like sweat and fear, yes, but also like something else. Like the medical supplies he had been hauling. Like the antiseptic he used to clean his ship. Like the soap his mother had sent him from Earth. Made with herbs from her garden. Human smells. Strange smells, but not aggressive smells. "Good boy," Daehyun said quietly, using the words he had said to Max 1,000 times. "You're a good boy, aren't you?" He lifted one hand slowly, keeping his movements smooth and calm. His hands were still tied together, but he could move them enough to reach out. He extended his fingers, palm down, the way you offer your hand to a nervous dog. A gesture that said, "I will not hurt you." A gesture that said, "You are safe with me." Cravath's eyes focused on his hand. The creature's breath came faster, uncertainty radiating from every muscle. In the stands above, people started to murmur. This was not how fights went. This was not how anything went. Then, in a moment that would be recorded and broadcast across 100 worlds, Cravath the Unbroken, the beast of 1,000 battles, lowered its head and touched its nose to Daehyun's outstretched hand. The scales were warm and surprisingly smooth. The creature's breath washed over his fingers. And in its eyes, for just a moment, the rage flickered and went out, replaced by something the galaxy had not seen from this beast in over a decade. Confusion, curiosity, and the smallest, most fragile beginning of trust. The arena was completely silent. Somewhere in the stands, someone dropped their drink, and the sound of shattering glass echoed like a gunshot. The silence in the arena lasted exactly 7 seconds. Then someone in the crowd screamed. Not a scream of excitement, but of confusion and anger. The scream broke the spell, and suddenly everyone was shouting at once. The guards around the arena raised their weapons. The arena master's voice crackled over the speakers, commanding something in a harsh, clicking language. Daehyun kept his hand steady against Cravath's nose. The creature had not moved, had not pulled away. Its yellow eyes were locked on his face, searching for something. Answers, maybe. Or understanding. Under his palm, Daehyun could feel the beast's heartbeat through its scales. Fast but slowing, the heartbeat of something that had spent its entire life in fear and was just now remembering what calm felt like. "It's okay," Daehyun whispered again. "I've got you." A sharp crack split the air. Pain exploded in Cravath's side as a neural disruptor hit its target. The creature howled, a sound that made Daehyun's bones vibrate. Its body jerked sideways, muscles spasming from the electric shock. The red light on its collar pulsed brighter, sending another wave of pain through its nervous system. Rage flooded back into Cravath's eyes. Its lips pulled back in a snarl, and for a moment Daehyun thought he was going to die. But the creature was not looking at him. It was looking at the guards who surrounded the arena floor, their weapons raised and glowing with power. Another disruptor fired. This one hit Cravath in the shoulder. The beast staggered, roaring in pain and fury. The guards were trying to force the fight, trying to make the creature kill the way it was supposed to, the way it had been trained through years of torture and conditioning. Without thinking, Daehyun stepped between Cravath and the nearest guard. His hands were still tied. He had no weapon, no armor, no way to protect himself. But he spread his arms anyway, making himself a shield between the beast and the pain. "Stop it," he shouted in Korean. Then in broken Galactic Common, "Stop hurting him!" A disruptor blast meant for Cravath hit Daehyun instead. The pain was like being struck by lightning and frozen in ice at the same time. Every nerve in his body fired at once, and he collapsed to his knees, gasping. His vision went white, then dark, then white again. He could taste blood in his mouth. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard Cravath roar again. But this roar was different. This one was not fear or pain. This was pure, concentrated fury. Something in the beast's ancient mind had broken, Or maybe something had finally clicked into place. For the first time in 12 cycles, someone had protected it. Someone had chosen to take its pain instead of causing more. Cravath moved like a storm. Its 6 legs carried it across the arena floor in a blur of black scales and rage. The first guard went down with barely a sound, torn apart by claws that had killed 1,000 warriors. The second guard managed to fire once before Cravath's jaws closed around him. The third tried to run but was caught by the beast's spiked tail. The crowd was screaming now, a sound of panic instead of excitement. People rushed for the exits. The arena master was shouting orders, but no one was listening. More guards poured onto the floor, wearing heavy armor and carrying bigger weapons. They formed a line between Cravath and the exit tunnels. Daehyun struggled to his feet, still shaking from the disruptor blast. His hands were numb and his legs felt like water, but he could see what was happening. He could see Cravath surrounded. Could see the guards preparing to fire everything they had. The beast would die here, killed for the crime of refusing to kill. No, Daehyun said. His voice was quiet, but somehow Cravath heard it. The creature's head swung toward him, yellow eyes blazing with violence. For a heartbeat, they stared at each other. Human and beast, prey and predator, 2 things that should have been enemies but were now something else entirely. Run, Daehyun said, louder this time. He pointed toward the tunnel that led to the holding cells where the guards were thinnest. That way, run! Cravath understood. Maybe not the words, but the meaning behind them. The beast charged toward the tunnel, smashing through 2 guards who tried to block its path. Daehyun ran after it, his legs barely working, his whole body screaming at him to stop. Behind them, the remaining guards opened fire. Energy blasts scorched the ground where Daehyun had been standing a second before. The tunnel was dark and narrow, made for maintenance workers, not for a creature the size of a cargo transport. Cravath's scales scraped against the walls as it forced its way through, leaving deep gouges in the metal. Daehyun followed, his breath coming in painful gasps. He could hear shouting behind them and the sound of heavy boots running. They burst out of the tunnel into a holding area filled with cages. Other creatures were locked inside, smaller than Cravath, but just as savage-looking. They roared and hissed as Cravath passed, throwing themselves against the bars of their prisons. The smell was terrible, like blood and waste and fear mixed together. Cravath did not slow down. It crashed through a door at the far end of the room, bending the metal like paper. Beyond was a loading bay where hover trucks brought supplies for the arena. The bay doors were open to the outside world, and through them, Daehyun could see the industrial wastelands of Varash Prime. Factories and scrapyards stretched to the horizon under a sky the color of rust. They ran out into the wasteland as alarms screamed behind them. Cravath's 6 legs carried it across broken ground and piles of debris with ease. Daehyun followed as best he could, jumping over rusted metal and ducking under fallen pipes. His lungs burned. His vision was starting to go gray at the edges. Finally, when the arena was far behind them and the alarms had faded to a distant wail, Cravath stopped. They were in the ruins of an old factory, surrounded by broken machines and empty cargo containers. The creature's sides heaved as it caught its breath, and Daehyun collapsed against a wall, his whole body shaking. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Cravath turned to look at him. The rage had left its eyes. Instead, there was something else. Something that looked almost like confusion. Or wonder. Daehyun managed a weak smile. "Good boy," he whispered. "You're such a good boy." He reached into his torn shirt and pulled out the photograph that he had kept hidden through everything. Max stared up at him from the picture, happy and whole and safe. Daehyun's eyes burned with tears he had not allowed himself to cry for 2 years. Cravath moved closer, its massive head lowering until it was level with Daehyun's face. The creature sniffed at the photograph, then at Daehyun's hands. Its tongue, rough as sandpaper, licked his fingers once. A gesture of acceptance, of trust. "I'm going to call you Baeko," Daehyun said, his voice shaking. "It means white tiger. A creature of legends, strong and brave." He touched the beast's nose again, feeling the warmth there. "You're not a monster. You never were. You're just someone who got hurt and forgot what kindness felt like." Baeko made a sound deep in its chest. Not a growl, not a roar. Something softer. Almost like a purr. The beast lay down on the ground, its body curling around Daehyun in a protective circle. Its scales were warm against his back. In the distance, sirens wailed. The hunt had begun. But for now, in this moment, they were safe. A human and a beast, both far from home, both broken in different ways, both finding in each other. something they had thought was lost forever. Dae-hyun closed his eyes and let the exhaustion take him. His last thought before sleep was of Max and how proud his old friend would have been. How he would have liked Baeko. How he would have understood exactly why Dae-hyun could not leave this creature behind. They were Pack now, and Pack stayed together. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every civilized world had seen the footage. A human standing in front of the legendary Kravath. A human touching the beast that had killed over 1,000 warriors. A human escaping with the arena's greatest prize as if they were old friends. The broadcast had been recorded by hundreds of cameras and shared on every network, legal and illegal. Some people watched it with wonder. Most watched it with anger. In the luxury towers of Varash Prime, Crime Lord Vexus watched the footage for the 20th time. His 4 eyes narrowed as he studied the human's face, the calm expression, the strange gentleness in his movements. Vexus had built his fortune on fear. The arenas across 12 systems belonged to him, and Kravath had been his greatest weapon. Warriors paid fortunes for the chance to face the beast and prove their courage. Most died, all feared. That fear had made Vexus rich beyond measure. Now a soft-skinned human had destroyed everything with kindness. The very idea was poison. If word spread that Kravath could be tamed, that the legendary beast had been defeated not with strength but with compassion, the entire system would collapse. Warriors would stop coming. The fear would die, and with it Vexus's empire. He pressed a button on his desk and a hologram appeared showing a bounty notice. 50 million credits for the human and the beast, dead or alive, preferably dead. Within minutes, the notice appeared on every bounty board in the sector. Within hours, hunters from 100 worlds were booking passage to Vorash Prime. 3 days later, Dae-hyun and Baeko were hiding deep in the industrial wastes when the first hunters arrived. Dae-hyun had been trying to treat Baeko's wounds with what little medical supplies he had salvaged. The disruptor burns were bad, leaving raw patches where the scales had been burned away. Baeko lay still as Dae-hyun worked, occasionally making soft rumbling sounds when the antiseptic stung. "I know it hurts," Dae-hyun said softly, wrapping makeshift bandages around the worst burns. "But we have to keep them clean. Infection out here would be bad." Baeko's tail twitched and suddenly the beast's head snapped up, facing the east. Its nostrils flared, taking in scents that Dae-hyun could not smell. A low growl built in its chest. "What is it?" Dae-hyun whispered, his hand moving to rest on Baeko's neck. The gesture had become automatic over the past few days. Touch meant safety. Touch meant they were in this together. The answer came in the form of plasma fire. 3 bolts hit the ground near their hiding spot, melting metal and sending up clouds of toxic smoke. Dae-hyun threw himself flat as more shots followed. Through the smoke he could see shapes moving, 4 of them, maybe 5, wearing heavy armor and carrying weapons that hummed with power. Bounty hunters. Baeko roared and charged before Dae-hyun could stop him. The beast moved through the smoke like a shadow and screams followed. The sound of tearing metal, a weapon firing wildly, then cutting off. Dae-hyun stayed low, his heart hammering, counting the sounds of combat and trying to understand what was happening. When the smoke cleared, 4 bodies lay scattered across the ground. Baeko stood among them, breathing hard, fresh blood staining his scales. The beast's yellow eyes found Dae-hyun immediately, checking to make sure he was safe. When it saw him unharmed, Baeko's posture relaxed slightly. "We need to move," Dae-hyun said, climbing to his feet. "More will come." They always do. They did. Over the next week, hunters came in waves. Some were professional, moving in coordinated teams with advanced weapons. Others were desperate amateurs hoping for easy money. All of them failed. Baeko fought with the fury of something that had finally found something worth protecting, and Dae-hyun learned to fight alongside him. Not with strength, but with strategy. He learned to predict when hunters would attack and from which direction. He learned to use the environment, collapsing old structures to block paths or create barriers. He learned to read Baeko's movements and coordinate with them. They became a unit, human and beast, brain and muscle, strategy and power, but they could not run forever. The wastes were large but not infinite, and every day more hunters arrived. The bounty had increased to 75 million credits, then 100 million. Vexus was getting desperate. On the 10th day, something unexpected happened. Dae-hyun was searching through an abandoned warehouse for food and water when he heard a voice call out in Korean. "Don't shoot! I'm human!" Dae-hyun spun around and Baeko tensed beside him. A woman emerged from behind a stack of crates, hands raised to show she was unarmed. She was young, maybe late 20s, wearing a pilot's jacket that had seen better days. Her face was tired but determined. "My name is Ha Jin," she said, speaking quickly. "I'm a cargo pilot based 3 systems over. I saw what you did in the arena." She glanced at Baiko nervously, but her fear was mixed with something else. Respect. Everyone saw it. The footage has spread everywhere. "Then you know there's a bounty on us," Daehyun said, not lowering his guard. "Why are you here?" "Because what you did matters." Ha-jin took a step closer, careful to keep her movements slow. "The arenas have been running for decades. They take creatures from dying worlds, break them, and turn them into entertainment. Everyone knows it's wrong, but no one does anything because we're afraid. You weren't afraid. You showed the galaxy that those creatures aren't monsters. They're victims." She reached into her jacket slowly and pulled out a data pad. "There are others like me, humans who want to help. We've been organizing quietly, trying to figure out how to get you off this planet. But it's not easy. The space stations are being watched. Every ship that leaves is being searched." Daehyun looked at the data pad, then at Ha-jin. He wanted to trust her, but trust had become a dangerous luxury. As if sensing his doubt, Ha-jin smiled sadly. "I have a brother," she said. "Back on Earth before I came out here. He worked at an animal shelter, rescuing dogs that had been abused. He used to tell me that broken animals could heal if you gave them time and patience. When I saw you with Baiko, I thought of him." Her eyes grew wet. "He died 3 years ago. Plasma fire during a raid on his colony. I think he would have liked what you did. I know he would have helped if he could." Daehyun felt something in his chest loosen. He looked at Baeko, whose yellow eyes were watching Ha-jin carefully. The beast's posture was wary but not aggressive. After a moment, Baiko lowered his head slightly. Not a gesture of submission, but of acceptance. "Okay," Daehyun said. "What's your plan?" Ha-jin's smile widened. "We have a ship hidden in the southern scrapyards, small but fast, and we have a contact who can disable the tracking systems long enough for us to jump to hyperspace. But we need to get you there first, and that means crossing through the most heavily patrolled area of the wastes." Over the next 2 days, Ha-jin proved to be as capable as her word. She brought supplies, medicine for Baiko's wounds, and news from the outside. The galaxy was divided, she told them. Some species saw Daehyun as a criminal who had stolen valuable property. Others saw him as a symbol of resistance against the arena system. Protests had started on a dozen worlds. Some governments were calling for investigations into the arena syndicates. But Vexus had also increased the bounty to 150 million credits and had hired elite hunters. The most dangerous one was named Tal, a Krell warrior who had never failed a contract. Tal was coming to Varash Prime, and he was bringing a full squad with him. "We need to move now," Ha-jin said on the 3rd day. "Tal arrives tomorrow. Once he's here, our chances of escape drop to almost 0. They set out that night, moving through the darkest parts of the waste toward the southern scrapyards. Baiko moved silently despite his size, and Daehyun stayed close, one hand always touching the beast's scales. Ha-jin led the way, checking her datapad constantly for patrol movements. They were halfway there when the ambush came. Not from hunters, but from something worse. 3 more arena beasts escaped or released, blocking their path. These creatures were smaller than Baiko, but no less dangerous. They were starving, desperate, and they saw potential prey. Baiko stepped forward, placing himself between the other beasts and Daehyun. A challenge and a warning. But Daehyun had learned something over the past 2 weeks. He had learned that Baiko's way was not the only way. He stepped around Baiko, ignoring Ha-jin's gasp of shock, and approached the 3 beasts. He crouched down slowly, making himself small. He averted his eyes. And he waited. The lead beast, a 4-legged creature covered in spines, stopped its advance. Confusion replaced aggression. Behind Daehyun, Baiko rumbled softly, not a threat but an explanation. One beast speaking to others in a language older than words. After a long, tense moment, the spined creature lowered its head. Then slowly it approached Daehyun and touched its nose to his hand. "Good boy," Daehyun whispered. "All of you. Good boys." The ancient ruins were half buried in the red sand of Varash Prime's eastern wastes. According to Ha-jin's maps, they had been here for thousands of years, built by a civilization that had died long before humans had even left Earth. Most people avoided the ruins, believing them cursed or contaminated. That made them the perfect hiding place. Daehyun and Hajin sat in what had once been a great hall, now open to the rust-colored sky. Peko lay nearby, the three smaller beasts curled up against his massive sides like children seeking comfort. Over the past few days, the creatures had bonded to Daehyun the same way Beko had. They followed him, protected him, and responded to his voice with trust instead of fear. Hajin had watched it all with a mixture of amazement and thoughtfulness. "You have a gift," she said, breaking the comfortable silence. "I've never seen anything like it." Daehyun shook his head. "It's not a gift. It's just patience, and treating them like they're people instead of weapons. Most people can't do that. Most people see monsters and stop thinking about what made them that way." Hajin pulled out her datapad and began scrolling through files. "I've been researching while we've been hiding, trying to find out more about Beko's species, the Krath." Daehyun looked up sharply. "The Krath? That's what they're called?" "We're called." Hajin's face was grim. "Past tense. I found records in the colonial archives. The Krath used to be a peaceful species. Herbivores, actually. They lived on a world called Krath Prime, about 40 light-years from here. Beautiful planet by all accounts. Forests and plains and mountains. The Krath lived in herds, raising their young together, building simple communities." She turned the datapad so Daehyun could see. The screen showed images of Krath that looked nothing like Beko. These creatures were smaller, their scales a soft blue-green instead of black. They had flowers woven into their manes and were surrounded by young ones playing in meadows. They looked gentle, happy. "What happened to them?" Daehyun asked, though part of him already knew the answer. "The arena syndicates found them about 200 years ago. The Krath were peaceful, which made them easy targets. The syndicates attacked during a breeding season when most of the adults were protecting their nests. They took the young ones. Thousands of them." Hajin's voice was tight with controlled anger. "Then they destroyed Krath Prime. Burned it down to nothing, erased all evidence that the Krath had ever been a civilization. They claimed it was a hunting preserve that got out of control, but the real reason was simpler. They didn't want anyone to know what the Krath had been. They needed everyone to believe they were monsters." Daehyun felt sick. He looked at Beko, who was watching him with those yellow eyes. The beast must have been taken as a young one, raised in cages, tortured into becoming a killer. 12 cycles in the arena meant Beko had been suffering for over a decade. And before that, there had probably been years of conditioning, breaking, reshaping a gentle creature into a weapon. "The Krath they took were trained from birth to fight," Hajin continued. "Starved, shocked, forced to kill or be killed. The syndicates built their empire on stolen children and manufactured monsters. Kravath, Beko, whatever you want to call him. He's probably one of the last of his kind. There might be others scattered across the galaxy in various arenas, but Krath Prime is dead. The species is effectively extinct." Daehyun stood and walked over to Beko. He placed both hands on the beast's massive head, looking into those eyes that had seen so much pain. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry for what they did to you, for what they took from you." Beko made a low sound in his chest and gently pressed his head against Daehyun's chest, a gesture of comfort, as if the beast understood that Daehyun hurt for him. "We have to tell people," Daehyun said, turning back to Hajin. "The galaxy needs to know the truth, not just about Beko, but about all of them. Every creature in every arena across every system. They're not monsters. They're victims." Hajin nodded slowly. "I was hoping you'd say that. There's something else in these ruins. I found it yesterday while you were sleeping. Come on." She led him deeper into the ruins, through corridors carved with symbols that looked almost like writing. The walls were covered in images of Krath showing their history. Daehyun saw pictures of Krath building homes, raising young, living in peace. The further they went, the older the images became until they reached a chamber at the heart of the ruins. Inside was a machine, ancient but still functioning, its surface covered in soft blue light. Hajin approached it carefully and pressed her hand against a panel. The machine hummed to life and a hologram appeared above it. The hologram showed a Krath, but not like Beko. This one was old, with scales faded to gray, but its eyes were clear and intelligent. "This is a historical archive," Hajin explained. "The Krath who built this place left it as a record of their people. Everything about their culture, their language, their way of life. It's all here." The hologram began to speak in a language that sounded like wind chimes and distant thunder. Daehyun's translator chip struggled for a moment, then found enough patterns to make sense of the words. "We are the Krath," the hologram said. We build this monument so that we will not be forgotten. We are a people of peace, of community, of care for all living things. We raise our young together. We sing to the stars. We honor the earth that feeds us. If you find this message, know that we existed. Know that we were more than what others made us become. The hologram faded and the chamber fell silent. Daehyun stood there, his throat tight with emotion. Baeko had followed them into the chamber and now stood beside the machine, staring at the space where the hologram had been. Did he understand? Did some part of his broken memory recognize the truth of what he had been before? We can broadcast this, Hajin said. The archive has transmission capabilities. Old but functional. We can send the full historical record to every major network in the galaxy. Show everyone what the Krath were. Show them what the syndicates did. Show them what you've done by refusing to let Baeko be the monster they made him into. Vexus will come after us even harder, Taehyun said. He's already coming after us as hard as he can. Hajin's smile was fierce. But this could hurt him in ways that violence never could. This could destroy his empire. Daehyun looked at Baeko, then at the other three beasts who had followed them into the chamber. He thought about Max, about his brother Hajin had lost, about all the creatures across the galaxy suffering in arenas for the entertainment of people who had forgotten to see them as living beings. Do it, he said. Send it everywhere. Let the galaxy see the truth. Hajin worked at the machine for an hour, her fingers flying over ancient controls, adapting modern codes to work with technology thousands of years old. Finally, she stepped back. It's ready. Once I activate this, the message will go out on every frequency we can reach. It'll hit the major networks within minutes. By tomorrow, billions of people will have seen it. Will it be enough? Daehyun asked. I don't know, Hajin admitted. Some people won't care. Some will make excuses. But some will see and understand. Some will remember that they're supposed to be better than this. That's all we can hope for. Daehyun took a deep breath. Then let's hope it's enough. Hajin pressed the final sequence and the machine's hum grew louder. Across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds, on millions of screens, a message appeared. It showed the archive's historical records. It showed images of peaceful Krath living in harmony. It showed the attack that destroyed them. It showed Baeko's scarred body, the torture devices used in the arenas, the truth of what had been done to create monsters. And it showed Daehyun, standing with his hand on Baeko's head, proving that what had been broken could begin to heal. That compassion could reach even the most damaged soul, that the galaxy's greatest shame could be confronted and changed. The message ended with simple words in 100 languages. They were never monsters. We made them that way, and we can choose to stop. In his tower on Vorash Prime, Vexus watched the broadcast and knew his empire was beginning to crumble. In council chambers across civilized space, politicians began asking uncomfortable questions. In streets and homes and ships, ordinary people saw the truth and felt shame or anger, or the beginning of change. And in the ancient ruins, Daehyun sat with Baeko and waited for the storm that was coming. Because Vexus would not let this stand. The crime lord would bring everything he had, and the final confrontation was inevitable. But for now, in this moment, they had done something important. They had told the truth, and sometimes truth was the most powerful weapon of all. The ships came at dawn, when the rust-colored sky of Vorash Prime was just beginning to lighten. Daehyun saw them first, dozens of dark shapes descending through the clouds like birds of prey. They were coming to the ruins, which meant Hajin's broadcast had been traced. Vexus knew where they were hiding. We need to go, Hajin said, already moving toward the southern exit, but Daehyun stood still, watching the ships descend. Baeko was beside him, the three smaller beasts pressed close. In the past 3 days since the broadcast, 4 more escaped arena creatures had found them. Word traveled fast among the broken and the lost. They could sense safety. They could sense someone who would not hurt them. We can't run anymore, Daehyun said quietly. If we run, they'll just follow. They'll hunt us across the galaxy until we're dead or captured. This has to end here. Then we'll die here. Hajin's voice was steady, accepting. She had known this moment might come. At least the truth is out there now. At least people know. The ships landed in a circle around the ruins, kicking up clouds of red dust. Ramps descended and armed soldiers emerged. Hundreds of them, wearing the black armor of Vexus's private security forces. And behind them came the hunters, the elite ones who had been promised fortunes for this moment. Among them was Tal, the Krell warrior whose reputation preceded him like a shadow. He stood 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor plating, carrying weapons that could level buildings. A final ship landed, larger than the others, marked with Vexus's personal symbol. The crime lord himself emerged, his 4 eyes gleaming with rage and satisfaction. He had come to personally oversee the end of the human who had destroyed his empire, because the empire was falling. In the 3 days since the broadcast, 12 arena worlds had seen riots. Governments were launching investigations. 3 major sponsors had withdrawn their funding, unwilling to be associated with genocide and torture. Vexus had lost billions of credits and decades of work, all because one human had refused to let a beast die alone. Vexus's voice boomed across the ruins, amplified by speakers. Human, surrender the creatures and yourself. Do this and I will grant you a quick death. Resist, and I will make you suffer in ways that will teach the galaxy what happens to those who defy me. Daehyun stepped forward so Vexus could see him clearly. Behind him, Baeko and the other creatures formed a protective semicircle. 7 beasts in total now, all of them watching the soldiers with the wariness of things that had learned to expect pain from armed strangers. They're not yours, Daehyun called back. They were never yours. You stole them, broke them, and used them. But they're free now. They're people, not property. And I won't let you take them back. Vexus's laughter was like breaking glass. People? They are animals. Weapons, tools. And you are a fool who has confused mercy for strength. I will show you the difference. The crime lord made a gesture, and 3 large cargo containers were brought forward on hover sleds. The containers opened and more creatures emerged. These were arena beasts too, but different from the ones with Daehyun. These creatures were still collared, still controlled by shock devices and fear conditioning. Their eyes were empty of everything except rage and pain. Vexus had brought them as weapons, as living proof that his way was the only way. Kill them, Vexus commanded. Kill them all. The controlled beasts charged forward, roaring and snarling. Baeko stepped forward to meet them, ready to defend his pack. But Daehyun moved faster. He walked directly into the path of the charging creatures, placing himself between them and Baeko. No weapons, no armor, just a human standing still while monsters bore down on him. Hajin screamed his name. The soldiers raised their weapons, ready to fire. Vexus leaned forward, eager to see the moment when the human's foolishness cost him his life. The first beast reached Daehyun, a massive creature with 4 arms and a mouth full of serrated teeth. It raised one arm to strike. Then it stopped, confused by the human's complete stillness, by his lack of fear. By the way, he slowly crouched down and extended one hand palm down, in a gesture of peace. It's okay, Daehyun said softly. You don't have to do this. You don't have to hurt anyone anymore. You're safe. I promise you're safe. The creature's arm wavered. Its eyes, dull with pain and conditioning, focused on Daehyun's face. Behind the human, Baeko rumbled softly. Not a threat. An invitation. A promise from one broken thing to another that there was a different way to live. The 4-armed beast lowered its arm. Then slowly it touched its clawed hand to Daehyun's palm. The gesture was gentle, almost hesitant, as if the creature had forgotten what gentleness felt like. Good boy, Daehyun whispered. Such a good boy. The other controlled beasts had stopped their charge, watching. One by one, Daehyun approached them. One by one, he crouched down, made himself small, offered his hand. And one by one, they responded. Not with violence, but with the desperate hope of things that had been hurt for so long, they had forgotten that anything else was possible. Vexus's face contorted with fury. No, I command you to kill him. Your collars, obey your collars. He activated the shock function on all the collars at once. The creatures screamed in pain, their bodies convulsing. But even through the agony, they did not attack Daehyun. They had tasted something in that brief moment of kindness, and even torture could not make them give it up. Turn off the collars, Daehyun shouted at Vexus. You're killing them. Stop, that is the point, Vexus snarled. Better dead than defiant. Better destroyed than free. But someone else moved. A Jinn had been working at her datapad, her fingers flying over the controls. With a final button press, she sent out a signal that overloaded every shock collar in the area. The devices sparked, smoked, and died. The creature's pain stopped instantly. Free of the collars, free of the pain, the beast turned to look at Vexus. And in their eyes was not fear anymore. It was rage. Pure, justified rage at the one who had hurt them for so long. Vexus stumbled backward as the creatures advanced. Soldiers!
Protect me!
Kill them all! The soldiers raised their weapons, but before they could fire, something unexpected happened. Ships descended from the clouds, different ships bearing the marks of a dozen different worlds. And from those ships came more soldiers, but these wore the uniforms of the Galactic Coalition peacekeepers. A voice boomed from the lead ship. This is Commander Subin of the Coalition forces. Vexus, you are under arrest for crimes against sentient species, including genocide, slavery, and torture. Surrender immediately, Subin. Daehyun recognized the name. Hajin had mentioned her, another human who had been organizing resistance against the arena system. She had taken the broadcast and used it as evidence, convincing enough coalition members to take action. Vexus looked around wildly. His soldiers were outnumbered now, the coalition forces forming a perimeter. His beasts had turned against him. His empire was crumbling in real time. You cannot do this, Vexus screamed. I have rights. I have contracts. The arenas are legal. They were legal. Subin's voice was cold. But laws can change, and we are changing them now. The Emergency Council has voted unanimously to shut down all arena operations pending investigation. You are finished, Vexus. The crime lord looked at Daehyun, his four eyes burning with hatred. This is your fault. You and your weakness. You have destroyed everything. No, Daehyun said quietly. You destroyed everything the day you decided that suffering was entertainment. I just showed people there was another way. Coalition soldiers moved in to arrest Vexus and his forces. Some of Vexus's soldiers surrendered immediately. Others tried to fight and were quickly subdued. Through it all, the creatures stayed close to Daehyun, forming a protective circle around him. They had found their pack and they would not abandon it. Subin's ship landed and the commander emerged. She was a human woman in her 40s with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. She walked directly to Daehyun and studied him for a long moment. You have caused quite a stir, she said finally. Do you know how many governments have fallen in the past 3 days? How many people have taken to the streets demanding change? You and your beast have started a revolution. I didn't mean to start anything, Daehyun said. I just couldn't let him die alone. Subin smiled, and it was a smile of understanding. The best revolutions are always started by people who just wanted to do the right thing. She looked at Baeko and the other creatures. What will you do with them now? The coalition can provide sanctuary, but they will need someone they trust to care for them. Daehyun had already thought about this. There's a world called Haven's Rest in the Outer Rim. It's mostly uninhabited, but it has good climate and resources. I was thinking of establishing a sanctuary there, a place where rescued arena beasts can live in peace, heal, maybe even remember what they were before all this. That will take funding, resources, protection. Subin considered this. The coalition can provide those things. Consider it reparations for what was allowed to happen. And I know several other humans who would volunteer to help. Hajin has already offered. Hajin nodded, moving to stand beside Daehyun. Someone needs to teach people how to do what you do, how to see past the monster to the person underneath. Over the next weeks, the plan came together. Haven's Rest was purchased and prepared. More rescued creatures arrived, brought from arenas across the galaxy that were being shut down by force or by public pressure. Not all the creatures could be saved. Some were too far gone, too broken by what had been done to them, but many responded to patience and kindness the way Baeko had. Many began to heal. Daehyun became the sanctuary's director, though he never felt comfortable with the title. He was just a man doing what felt right, caring for creatures that needed someone to care. Baeko remained at his side always, the first and most faithful companion. The beast that had killed over 1,000 warriors now spent his days playing with younger creatures, teaching them that they were safe, protecting them from nightmares both real and remembered. 6 months after the confrontation in the ruins, Daehyun sat on the porch of his small house on Haven's Rest. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors that reminded him of Earth. Around him, scattered across the grasslands, dozens of creatures lived in peace. Some played, some slept, some simply stood and enjoyed the feeling of wind that carried no scent of blood or fear. Baeko lay beside Daehyun, the beast's massive head resting in his lap. Daehyun stroked the scales gently, finding the spots that made Baeko rumble with contentment. In his other hand, he held the photograph of Max, worn and faded but still precious. I wish you could have met him, boy, Daehyun said softly. I think you two would have gotten along. Baco made a soft sound somewhere between a purr and a sigh. His yellow eyes were half closed with contentment, and in them there was no trace of the rage that had once consumed him. There was only peace, only trust, only love. Hajin emerged from the house carrying 2 cups of tea. She sat down on Daehyun's other side and handed him one. "Subin called," she said. 3 more arena worlds have agreed to shut down. The movement is spreading. People are calling it the kindness revolution, though I think that's a bit dramatic. Daehyun smiled. "Everything out here is dramatic. I just wanted to help one creature. Now look what happened." "You changed the galaxy," Hajin said simply. "You reminded people that compassion isn't weakness, that strength without mercy is just cruelty. That's worth being dramatic about." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun disappeared below the horizon. Around them, the creatures of Haven's Rest settled in for the night, safe and warm and free. The beast of 1,000 battles dozed peacefully, finally understanding what it meant to be loved. And the human who had saved him looked up at the stars and thought about all the other beasts out there, waiting for someone to see past their scars and remember that they had been people once. The work would never be finished. There would always be more creatures to save, more people to convince, more battles to fight against those who profited from pain. But for tonight, this was enough. This peace, this moment, this small victory of kindness over cruelty. "Good boy," Daehyun whispered one more time, his hand gentle on Baco's scales. "Such a good boy." And across the galaxy, the message spread. Not through broadcasts or speeches, but through actions, through choices, through the simple, radical decision to treat the broken with gentleness instead of fear. The universe had taught them all to fight. But humans had taught them something better. They had taught them they could stop.